For those of you who've been here before, this will not be new. The KIN Challenge is actually a class at Northwestern in the MBA program. And it's a very unique program where they actually get to identify a problem and solve a problem. This year, there were 4 teams that competed for the KIN Challenge Award to be recognized. And we have 2 of the teams with us today who are going to give us a short 7 to 8 minute synopsis on their project. The first group is called Team Sabi, and they should be coming out the door. Here they come. If this works as planned, they should be coming out the door. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and do their pitch.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and here we have Ahalia, Stanley, and Salman. And we are delighted to be here to introduce Sabi, a tool to foster trust in risky environments. So the mission of Sabi is really to build trust for Nigerian entrepreneurs in hopes of enabling access ultimately for Nigerians. So all of you are innovators, so you're very familiar with the entrepreneur-investor relationship. The entrepreneur brings an idea, local knowledge, a business plan, and execution, and the investor brings funding, connections, mentoring experience, etc. Unfortunately, in the developing world, this relationship is a bit more complicated, as we've heard today, over and over again, I would say. Truly, without strong institutions, for example, without enforcement of contracts, without reliable and transparent data, investors typically underinvest in really good, positive NPV projects. This also means that entrepreneurs, they tend to think short term. We are interested in solving that problem in particular. So let's go to Nigeria. Meet Obi. Obi's an entrepreneur. He hustles for a living. Hustling is actually an affectionate term Nigerians use for venturing. As you can see from the picture, Obi is carrying a generator on his head. That generator is plugged into an extension cord that is resting on his shoulder. And that extension cord is plugged into a phone charger that is charging a single phone that is hanging around his neck. Obi travels from village to village, charging people's cell phones for 10 cents a pop. And it's great because those people on the outskirts of Lagos don't really have access to consistent electricity because the government doesn't coordinate it very well. Obi is one of the 80% of the Nigerian labor force who works in the informal economy. And he really epitomizes the Nigerian hustle, so to speak, because he's looking to solve a problem that exists right in front of his eyes, but he only ever will be able to carry 1 generator at a time. So this isn't really a long-term strategy. Let's say that Obi wanted to explore solutions beyond what he could only see right in front of him, something bigger. Well, the landscape in Nigeria doesn't really provide for financial, or for access to financial capital to help him break out of this cycle of continually building short-term businesses. His options include things like getting a microfinance loan, but the interest rate for a microfinance loan it's exorbitant, 87% in some cases, and he'd only have access to small amounts of capital. On the other hand, a business could pursue a commercial bank. That business would have access to a smaller interest rate at a medium term. However, those businesses have to be quite established. They require 20% EBITDA and 10 million in revenues. So what we see is this giant no man's land for an entrepreneur in Nigeria, and this is the space in which we want to work.
So you all met Obi. Now let's meet Abiola. He's an aspiring emigre investor who lives in the US and did his MBA at a US university. He now lives in Chicago and works as a consultant. He is really interested in investing in Nigeria because of the potential, the economic potential in the country. And more importantly, he really cares about his country. He shares a strong personal affinity with Nigeria. But what's stopping him? What's stopping him is something that Ashley alluded to earlier. He doesn't know who to trust in the risky environment that is Nigeria. And like him, there are 1.5 million people, Nigerians, living around the world in the diaspora, sending back a whopping $21 billion per year in remittances to Nigeria. So what's stopping, this seems like a huge pie to potentially tap and leverage. What's stopping them? Any businessman who wants, or businesswoman who wants to work in such a complex environment is faced by lots of issues on the ground. Nigeria, for example, and some of these pictures might be familiar to you, faces endemic ethnic conflict, has an unhealthy and huge dependence on the oil and gas industry at the expense of spending on public service infrastructure like healthcare. All of this compounds to create an environment of a huge amount of risk. And this risk is a problem because it leads to entrepreneurs like Obi having a short-term business mindset. How can I capitalize on the opportunity I see with my own two eyes today because I don't know what tomorrow is going to be like. I don't know what the government is going to throw at me. Which leads to low levels of trust in the society and institutions within the country. And that in turn leads to high concentration of capital. Capital goes towards established industries like oil and gas. It continues to go towards people with high net worth or high status in society, which further compounds the overall riskiness of the business environment in Nigeria. So we were really interested in this problem of the low level of trust in Nigerian society. And as we progressed through the challenge, we began to understand that this low level of trust exists because there's actually a third stakeholder in this business environment. That is someone who can provide broad-based market context, a lot more market context, so that the entrepreneur and the investor can begin to trust each other in this environment of complexity and high risk. This market context needs to be accurate, reliable, and cut across all facets of socio-economic classes in Nigeria and regions. So for Nigeria, we believe that a good network that can provide this broad-based market context is the National Youth Service Corps, or the NYSC. The NYSC is a one-year program that's organized by the government. It's a network of college graduates. 260,000 corpers were deployed across all states in Nigeria last year alone. They focused on areas of public importance, but tragically, they're often underutilized and under-resourced. A lot of them feel like they're not learning anything through this one-year experience of serving their country. So what we have here is a potentially motivated network that can bring insightful, distributed, and impactful solutions to help entrepreneurs like Obi scale their businesses. So how can we bring the NYSC, entrepreneurs, and investors in Nigeria together into one solution? Meet Sabi. Sabi is a fintech platform to build innovative and scalable Nigerian businesses through a network of trust that is fueled by the secret sauce of quality insight that the NYSC brings to the table. In a nutshell, Sabi allows the crowdsourcing of ideas across Nigeria, pools financial risk, and helps entrepreneurs establish a reliable investment track record that all go toward helping them build reputational capital.
Thanks. So let's quickly take you through how this is actually going to work. So meet Mimi. She is a recent graduate. She's got a bachelor's of science, and she's ready to change the world. She has been placed in Kano, and at a school, she's going to teach math and science to a secondary school. learners. And once she arrives, after a few days, she realizes that there's no stable electricity. She can't incorporate Khan Academy or any of these, revolutionary edtech into her classroom. So she does what all millennials do these days and complains on the internet, right? And so Sabi is a platform that can take that and take everything that the cohort decides to, complain about and, talk about their frustrations and say, oh, what are these things, and draw insights from them. It's something that would be useful to Obi, the entrepreneur, who can now log into the platform and find themes of investment to say, oh, I'm also interested in education. What can I do to help the state of education in Nigeria? Within there, it also digs deeper into specific projects and opportunities of opportunities and say, okay, well, I think I know something about equipment, I've done something in manufacturing, I'm gonna go develop an idea around this. And so he submits, or he wants to develop an idea, but he hasn't actually formalized something like this before. And so he needs a bit of help, putting together a strategic plan, a business plan, and actually getting large sources of finance so he can build a sustainable business. And that's really where Abiola, the investor, can help. On the same platform, he can see a list of entrepreneurs, their ideas, and even a track record of what these entrepreneurs have done before in the past. So it gives them a little bit more trust and to see what they can contribute to. But it's not just that. Once they decide on selecting an opportunity, the entrepreneur still has to source a matching amount of funds from their own network, family, friends, and their own community, so that there are more people to be accountable to. So again, we're trying to build the trust here. And so really, Sabi is a platform that brings together a lot more insights about the opportunity. It helps entrepreneurs identify useful opportunities across greater regions, and then it connects all of this to investors who want to invest in the country, and really brings all of this together into a solution.
So I'd just like to summarize where we are. Sabi is a modular solution that elegantly integrates 6 components. And I want to stress that we think of these 6 individual components as being by themselves for-profit enterprises, that we're not tied to having them be part of one platform that we are responsible for, but we're happy to work with 6 different partners to develop each of these different things. We can see with the trust technologies we've discussed today, the potential for using smarter AI, smarter blockchains to enforce these elements of trust. And we want to say that while this is a local solution, it's not just a Nigerian issue. But before I get there, I want to talk about the risk situation that we're hoping to intervene in. We believe that the diversification of business ideas with a long-term focus come from trust between entrepreneurs and investors, who then use shared capital to reduce risk. And this creates a virtuous cycle for investors and entrepreneurs in different regions. Now, it's not just Nigeria, as I alluded to. There are 212 million migrants globally, and this is not including the refugees. These 212 million migrants account for $430 billion annually in remittances to emerging economies. A 1% capture of this $430 billion is a huge amount of resources that could do a lot to help develop entrepreneurial cultures in developing worlds. And with that, we'd like to leave you with Sabi, building trust in Nigerian entrepreneurs, enabling access for Nigerians with hopeful applications elsewhere in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. So as the second group is coming out, let me just remind those who are not familiar with how Kin Challenge works. The students actually are asked to find a major challenge. They would start with a blank piece of paper. They find a major challenge. They talk about why it's important to them. They have to explain how they would explore it, and why in particular their team is equipped to handle it. So, I mean, it's actually quite real life. Our next group is Kittyhawk.
And I am Eduardo Uriarte, and we're here today to talk about short-distance transportation. And let's be honest, it sucks. So I'm going to tell you a personal example that might sound familiar to you. So what you... One second. There you go.
There you go.
That's my house in Madrid, Spain. And I work in the building that is on the far left. It's just 3 miles away. And guess how long it took me every single day to go there? Well, 1 hour. It was the most frustrating thing ever. I woke up every morning and I saw the building right there in front of me, and it took me 1 hour to go there. Time that I could be like with my family, friends, or even sleeping. It was horrible.
And I hate to say it, but that problem is not unique just to Eduardo. In fact, if any of you are like the average American, you are going to waste 52 hours of your life stuck in traffic every year. 52 hours. That costs our American economy. In fact, it costs $121 billion due to lost productivity. And that's just the economic cost. There's also an environmental cost. 75% of global CO2 emissions come from automobiles. So this massive challenge led us to our KIN project. How might we improve short-distance transportation to minimize those personal, societal, and environmental impacts? And just to be clear, when we talk about short-distance transportation, we're talking about something beyond a 20-minute walk and less than an hour-and-a-half drive. So the type of daily commutes that most of us take every day.
So let's imagine a new world, a place where with a click on your phone, you can fly from your house, office, whatever, to your final destination, straight. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be awesome. But it does sound pretty ambitious. We're Kittyhawk, and we're here to make that vision a reality. Now, I know it sounds quite ambitious, but every mountain can be climbed, and it always requires a first step. And we think we've come up with that first viable step toward making that vision a reality.
And how do we plan to do that? Well, introducing an electric self-piloting passenger air vehicle. It can carry one passenger plus one carry-on for a range of 35 miles. It has an onboard autopilot, so you don't need a license to ride it. You can actually be checking your phone while you're flying. And it's 100% electric, powered by electric motors and lithium-ion batteries. So given the latest advancements in battery technology, flight control system, and the decrease in carbon fuel prices, this vehicle can be built today. And I'm sure all of you are getting now a lot of questions, like, is this legal? How are you going to operate this? And that's understandable, like, can be overwhelming. And we are going to walk you through most of that questions.
So let's start with the largest elephant in the room, which is it legal? The answer is yes. In fact, for the past couple of months, we've been working with the FAA to think about what a regulatory approval process might look like for this. And in fact, it's going to follow the exact same process that any normal aircraft would go through. First, you get an experimental type certification, which lets you test a prototype and start logging flight data. Second, you get a type certification, which certifies the airworthiness of your vehicle. Third, you get a production certificate, which allows you to produce that same vehicle en masse. And finally, you get an operations certificate, which allows each one of you to actually step inside the thing and fly safely from point to point. And the reason we know this is because we actually met with the head of the FAA himself, Mr. Michael Huerta. It was pretty cool. It's the first time I've been with somebody with Secret Service agents. And he actually very much enjoyed the idea and connected us to the head of the Los Angeles Aircraft Certification Office. This is the office in the whole United States that is spearheading the regulatory approval process for these types of unmanned aerial vehicles. And in fact, we have a pretty historic meeting coming up with them at the end of June, next month, where we're going to sit down with that office's leadership team and literally help to start writing the rule book on what the regulatory approval process would look like for these types of vehicles.
And how do we plan to operate this? Well, we have explored many different use cases, and today we're bringing here the best one. So welcome to Miami. That's the map of Miami. And I'm going to talk about Lucy, who lives in the Sunset Islands right up there. And she commutes every single day from her house to her office in Miami downtown. And it takes her 35 minutes. With Kittyhawk, she can be in the office in just 4 minutes. That's like a 90% time reduction. And to understand how Lucy is going to fly from her house to her office, we need to see the size of our vehicle. So here you see the Ford Explorer. It's the top 3 selling car in the US. And now you see the size of our vehicle. It's definitely shorter and just a bit wider. So if we go back to the example of Lucy, thanks to her small size, we just need a small landing pad in her garden, in the drive-thru, and we can pick her and put her in the rooftop of her office. And this, like taking people from their house to their offices, is just the first step. This is not our final vision. Right? What we're going to do after that is we're going to start opening landing pads in the city, because I'm sure Lucy wants to go to a basketball match or to the beach. And the only thing we actually need is just 2-3 parking lots. Again, thanks to the small size of our vehicle. So we're going to start populating the city with this landing pads. So Lucy can go to the airport, shopping mall, downtown. And this will lead us to the final step. Like once we have created a big mass network of flying routes, we're going to open this. So anybody with just a click on their phone will be able to reserve a Kittyhawk and fly anywhere. And this is just an example of Miami, the test prototype market. Like we have plans for many other cities all around the world.
So I know what you're thinking. Wow, thousands of these vehicles darkening the skies, crashing into buildings. It's going to be chaos, right? Wrong. The reason why is because we're going to follow the exact same flight control process that the FAA uses to manage our nation's airspace today. So let's look at a typical aircraft. For every plane in the sky, there's a certified pilot who's controlling that aircraft with a digital flight control system. And they're in constant radio contact with the FAA's air traffic controller. Now, we are following the exact same model. The only difference is we're taking the same certified pilot and digital flight control system, and we're putting it on the ground. And actually, this is the secret to our operation, Kittyhawk Mission Control. It's a centralized, ground-based flight control center that uses certified pilots to leverage cutting-edge flight technology to control that fleet via redundant remote connections. And the best part is that those certified pilots are in constant contact with the same FAA air traffic controller, so that if they issue a command to ground one of those vehicles, that same pilot can command the vehicle and ground it. So when we talk about Kittyhawk, I know this still sounds fairly ambitious, but we're not just talking about our team of excellent MBA students, engineers, and lawyers, but we've got an advisory board that any entrepreneur would die for. A former Air Force One pilot who's advising us on flight control operations. A former NASA artificial intelligence specialist who's helping us with the sensor systems for self-navigation. A former executive at Bombardier and Lockheed Martin who has actually designed and shepherded through the entire regulatory approval process, multiple commercial aircraft. And finally, the CTO of General Motors' Urban Mobility Initiative, which is overseeing their self-driving cars.
So now we go back to our key challenge of how can we improve short-distance transportation by minimizing personal, societal, and environmental impact. We believe that our long-term vision is perfect for all of you because you don't waste time or effort driving. It's perfect for society because we're a professionally run company, so that will reduce the number of accidents, and our infrastructure cost is super low. And in the long term, this is perfect for the environment. We are 100% electric, and we don't waste any land.
So we'd like to leave you with one final thought. For decades, we've looked to the Jetsons as the symbol of the future of transportation and technology with their personal air vehicle. But I would challenge all of you today to start brainstorming a new symbol of the future of transportation, because we've proven that that form of transportation is not just for tomorrow, it's for today. We're Kittyhawk, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
They are not old enough to know who the Jetsons are. Absolutely not. I want to thank all the students that were involved, all the high school students, the college students. This has been just a wonderful module to work on. I would just recommend to everyone here in the room who's an innovator, a leader, a problem solver, a maker, we're all makers now, keep in touch with youth, support them and encourage them as much as you can, and most importantly, be inspired by them. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, Anna. That was great. And to Peter as well for putting together the high school segment. A few thoughts. First on the challenge, I wanted to add to Anna's point. The KIN Challenge is a call out to all Kellogg students to propose a project they'd like to work on. So teams applied to a competitive process. 4 were selected. You heard from 2. I wish you could have heard from all 4. We just didn't have the time, but the 2 other teams were Connects, which was working on how to support middle class and lower middle class women who have qualifications and educations in India, but have a hard time re-entering the workforce and are horribly underemployed. In fact, worldwide, I believe they're, out of all of the countries in the world, they're about country 138 on that list in terms of workforce participation from women. So they're working on that. And another group, AlloCare, decided they had an idea for an app to help connect corporate givers of products and services to nonprofits in a much more efficient, Uber-like way, and it's really quite beautiful. So thank you again to Sabi, Kittyhawk, Connects, and AlloCare. The Sabi team hit the topic of trust and inclusion, which has come up a number of times, and you'll note in the setup to the segments, trust and inclusion hasn't been part of the setup to any of them, but those have been topics that have popped up over and over again. And I'd like to underscore in the Kittyhawk team, it seems a little crazy, but they're quite serious. They have engineers, they have a law student, they have 2 Kellogg students in their team. They're actually working with the FAA to help define these parameters. They are looking at pilot opportunities in small ways to test and understand how this kind of a technology might ultimately go to market. They're serious, and it's pretty neat. Our hope with the KIN Challenge is that we help not just our students, but all of us to think bigger, to take on bigger and more meaningful challenges and whatever is exciting to you. And to our high school students, my gosh, Gwen, making the line from civic action and voting to medical innovation, good one, that's great. That takes a lot to make that jump and to recognize the critical importance of being civically engaged to achieve something like medical innovation. That is participatory culture. That's exactly what we talked about before. Max, did you get the email about the dress code? I mean, no, okay. I'm just, see, now he thinks I'm, one of those guys he just ditched at the last school. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Your comment about self-actualization is something that has bothered me for a very long time. It's obviously the top of the Maslow's hierarchy. It's very difficult, so let's be careful with it because it's very difficult to achieve that, and it's difficult to help people achieve it. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Al Landry's nodding. He's a coach and a former colonel, and he's in the middle of that right now. I believe that business schools and universities in general, but especially business schools, don't do nearly enough of that. It's one thing to teach us marketing and finance. Phenomenal, that's great. We have to do that. But really what we want is to figure out what should we be doing and why. How do we get to the next level? And what the heck is the next level anyway? Tell me to follow my passion, but what if I don't even know what my passion is? How do I find a purpose, and how do I carry it forward? And that's what you're talking about, and I loved it. And Catherine, we started today by saying that science was invented in the second half of the 17th century. You've told us today that science must be reinvented. So thank you for that. A big round of applause for the high school kids.